Hello and welcome to Breakfast All Day at the beautiful Overlook Hotel. Matt, Christy, Alonzo, I have not yet seen the new sequel to The Shining based on Stephen King's follow-up of The Shining, although it's also based on Stanley Kubrick's movie of The Shining that Stephen King didn't like. Anyway, I'll let these guys explain it because they've seen it.
We saw it last night,
Yes.
and I have not read the book. Matt, you've not read the book.
I haven't read Dr. Sleep.
I read The Shining as well, but thankfully our good friend Tom Ford was there. Not the designer Tom Ford, but my fellow SMU alum Tom Ford. And
I mean, he does designs.
He does, but not eyeshadow. He should, though, perhaps, as a side gig.
I mean, that we know of.
So, but the movie is significantly different from the book.
Yes.
Is one thing that he was telling us about
Do you want to describe
afterward.
the movie?
No, you can.
Okay, so Dr. Sleep follows the rest of Danny Torrance's life after the events of the book and or the movie, depending on how you interpret what we see on screen. It's about 40 years later. We see that he's got a pretty serious drinking problem, bounces from town to town. Dick Halloran, the character played by Scatman Crothers in The Shining, still talks to Danny. Teaches him how to deal with the ghost, the literal ghost of his past, lock him in a box, and then Danny comes across, or adult Dan comes across somebody else who has the shine. And meanwhile, we also learn about a group called the True Knot, that they are a type of almost, for lack of a better word, vampires that feed on the energy of the shine. And of course, those groups, these two groups, Danny and Abra, and the True Knot, whose leader is played by Rebecca Ferguson, who's terrific in this, are going to head for a showdown.
They're like evil, like Stevie Nicks gypsy vampires.
Yeah, exactly. Evil band of gypsies.
They are. So this movie is 2.5 hours long, and
Oh boy, is it!
And I don't think it is in any way a spoiler to say that a big chunk of it takes place at the Overlook Hotel, because that is really what's in the trailers. I mean, they show you in the trailers, hey, look, we've recreated the carpet, and we've recreated the scene where Danny is riding his big wheel through the hallways.
Well, so that's right at the beginning, right? But then we see, and again in the trailer, that all we see scenes in the hotel that will be a surprise to people who've read the books, apparently. Because from what Tom tells us in the book, because for those of us that read the Shining book, the hotel gets burned down at the end, like it gets blown up with the boiler. So there is no hotel. So this differentiates, from where the book goes. I think the story works. There's changes to the book. It seems I wouldn't say that there's anything. To me, the biggest problem with this movie is that it just kind of drags in a lot of places. Like it's kind of languid, and it's almost like there's too much of a story going on. And that it just starts to wear out its welcome. Like it just kind of keeps going.
I mean, the original Shining is more of a character piece than it is a plot piece, right? Wouldn't you say?
His deterioration, his descent into madness.
Yeah, I mean...
and its impact on the family.
Now, I'm someone who... I prefer the original novel to the book. I mean, to the movie.
Book's great, yeah.
But this one is probably... You're right. It's probably more plot-driven than it is about the descent into madness. I mean, the movie does try and address, adult Danny dealing with being the child of an alcoholic, rageaholic, and how he goes down that road himself. And there's some interesting points in that about how he tries to heal, and there's a lot of stuff where you see him in his AA meetings, and so there's a lot of that, like him trying to make peace with the demons of his past. But the movie gets a little ham-fisted about he's got to box up the ghosts of his past, and he's got to fight the demons of his past, and look, they're demons and ghosts for real.
Literally.
Yeah.
Well, it's this kind of awful paradox here with this contradiction in that all roads lead back to the Overlook Hotel, but what happens prior to that is more compelling. As far as it being a character study of Danny dealing with trauma, as far as him battling his demons, as far as the way in which they use the telepathy as a communications device and also as a protective device, and the cool things that Danny and Abra are able to do as far as and then eventually Rebecca Ferguson's character, once she is able to get into their mind,
right.
They do really cool, tricky stuff with that is tense, and a lot of it is deeply terrifying. Some of the imagery as far as like what happens to people along the way is shocking at first, the first time you see it.
Right. And
awful stuff happens like to children that is very disturbing.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this movie is terrifying and very, very tense for the first 2 hours. And then, again, this is not a spoiler. They eventually have to return to the Overlook Hotel and things have to happen there. All roads go back there.
And that's when it gets
that lame. Is when it gets lame. And that is when it gets like Ready Player One's recreation of The Shining. And it's, and it's cool in some ways in that, like, I don't want to give away details. There are some cool details in the recreation, but ultimately it feels like a half an hour of fan service.
Yeah.
Like, hey, look, you liked this in The Shining. Well, here it is again. And it feels kind of empty. What preceded that was far more suspenseful and interesting.
This movie kind of makes me bummed out that it seems like we may never get the New Mutants movie that Fox was going to release that was presenting that story as kind of a horror movie, because what this movie does really well is you see psychics fighting each other, having these psychic battles and doing like, projection, and they're, fooling and creating illusions in each other's minds and going into each other's minds. And it's terrifying. And it presents it in a way that, like, you watch the X-Men movie and you're like, oh, Professor X can read people's minds. That's cool. And this movie's like, oh my God, that would be awful.
Yeah.
Right? And this movie does that really well.
There's like a physical manifestation of
Sabrina,
that.
Get off that chair.
Sabrina.
What are you doing?
No, there's
Sorry.
from a production design perspective, it's a really cool manifestation of like the inner workings of their minds and how each person's mind is like organized differently in really distinct ways.
Right. And
that part's cool.
Rebecca Ferguson as Rose in this, Rosie, is great.
Right.
I thought she was
and chilling,
sexy and terrifying
funny.
And
she's really good.
Like, you understand, she's this not necessarily physical seductress, but like you can see like that charm gets used to, and her charisma gets used to abduct and then consume these children, and it's terrifying.
Yeah, there's like a Jedi mind trick kind of thing that she does, and another character does, where they say like,
"Oh, she's a pusher," right?
Right. Like,
which made me think of. I think I mentioned that after the movie. It made me think of Firestarter, because in the Firestarter book, the character played by Drew Barrymore, her dad could push, which was like tell people to do stuff, and they would do it. Or make them do stuff.
Yeah. So again, like that's all interesting. And
like the Purple Man.
Who's that?
Yes.
What's that?
The character from Marvel Comics that they did a version of in the Jessica Jones Netflix.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, Purple Man basically, like, he tells you to do something and you kind of have to do it.
Right. And Ewan McGregor is great in this, and he has this tremendous arc because he's a complete mess at the beginning, and understandably so, given the life he has lived and what all he's tried to, escape physically and psychologically. And then to watch his evolution as he gets sober and the career that he finds for himself is really quite lovely and quite poignant.
Right.
And the work he's doing at this hospice, and there's a whole thing with the cat that I love, which is so sad and so lovely. And he's helping people, cross over, but feel ready to cross over. And it's really poignant and lovely, because he's finally able to use this thing that has vexed him his whole life. He can use that telepathy for good, to actually help people in a benevolent way and reassure them in their most terrified moment that it's going to be okay. And that's lovely. And seeing him, like, when he's in his AA meetings, like, you see the strength he's accumulated, and like, that is exciting. And then it all kind of gets silly.
Right. I think that, if they had not gone into the hotel and, somewhat similar to the way the book goes, which is they go to the grounds where it was, I think that we might have had a stronger ending. But I think the movie gets distracted when they end up in the hotel, because you've got to hit all the major sets and see all the shots.
There's a thing,
and there's a shot,
There's a thing. Yep.
The only part that I thought worked in there was where I'm not going to give away which scene it is, but there's Rebecca Ferguson's reaction to something is spot on, because it's almost like it's almost like professional respect, right?
We should
Game
mention
recognized game.
Yes,
Yeah.
we should mention Kylie Curran is the young actress who plays Abra, who is the teenager who also has the shine. They all refer to it as something different,
Right.
whoever they are.
And who did they cast as Dick Halloran?
It's Carl Lumley,
Carl Lumley,
who is dead on.
who isn't doing the Scatman Crothers impression.
No, but
he
he
carries
gets
himself.
it.
He's really, because at that point Crothers is pretty old, and he carries himself kind of that
Mm-hmm.
hunched over way Crothers did. Yeah.
He's also the voice of Miles Davis in that Miles Davis doc that came out a few
Oh,
weeks back, which
right.
is really good. You know who I didn't realize? Henry Thomas is in this. I didn't realize, who that was in a key scene. I'm just gonna say Henry Thomas. That's all I'm gonna say. Yep.
Wait,
Matt's
what?
making a face.
We'll discuss off mic.
Not the scene at the bar. Well, and then remember the baseball kid?
Yeah, the baseball kid is a good one too.
That's a good.
Yeah, it's
right.
like a bit of casting.
Right.
Anyway, it's a great cast.
Right, which
We
was
should-
a little bit of a surprise.
yeah,
that one.
I'm like, oh no.
Right.
Mike Flanagan wrote and directed this. We should mention
I was
that.
about to say, who directed this
It's a
movie?
Gerald game he did. He did the Ouija Origin of Evil, which was really good
Ooh,
a couple
that was
years
fun
back.
one, yeah.
Yeah, so he's got this horror background. Again, it's tense and it moves really well for a while. I like the first 2 hours of it.
Yeah, and one of the things this movie does, this movie actually goes against Ebert's law of the economy of casting, in that he'll cast people that you know in roles, and you don't necessarily see him that much, which is a good trick, because a lot of times you see somebody you recognize in a role in a movie, and you're like,
Oh, they're going to matter.
they're gonna matter. He did it. They did it.
But maybe not.
But this one's like, oh, we never saw that person again.
Also, Cliff Curtis is also very
Cliff
good. in
Curtis,
it. He helps.
always reliable.
He helps Ewan McGregor.
Yeah.
I think there's a codicil to that rule because, like, you get a movie like Bridge of Spies where, you know, you only get one or two scenes with,
Sure.
you know, Jesse Plemons, but you need to remember Jesse
Yeah,
Plemons. So
sure.
they cast somebody
Yeah.
like that, you know? Anyway.
I can't believe that was Henry Thomas. Oh, I'm gonna be thinking about that all day.
We looked it up. So my friend Brian came with me. So
Wow.
Brian and Tom and I were IMDbing. We're like, oh my God, is that who that was? And anyway,
Wow.
we were all shocked. I loved him when I was 10.
What are your numbers?
I'm saying 7.
What did I say? 7.5.
You did.
Yeah.
Do you want to keep that?
Yeah.
Okay, 7.3 is our number. It is at 77% on the tomato meter.
Well, all right.
Are you
not
going
bad.
to see it, Alonzo?
I might. I mean, it's
not
like,
essential.
It's the end of the year, and I've got like
Sure.
I got lists to make, and you know, Christmas. So you know, I don't know. Maybe we'll see. All right. Hey, thanks for watching, everybody. Like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel while you're here. Why not? Go follow us on all the social medias at BeFastAllDay on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And, you know, go visit our Patreon page. Why not? At patreon.com/BeFastAllDay. You want to see us recap HBO's Watchmen or HBO's His Dark Material or Apple TV Plus's The Morning Show? We're talking about all of them over there exclusively for our Patreon members. So check it out. If you've already joined, thanks so much. And if you haven't, get on that. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you guys next time. Bye.